I will never forget the weight of that small, folded piece of paper. It was lighter than air, yet it carried enough truth to destroy the life I had built over 17 years. The head nurse didn't look at me when she pressed it into my palm. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor, her fingers trembling against mine for just a second too long. And in that moment, before I even unfolded it, before I read those 8 words that would rearrange everything I thought I knew, I felt it. That cold, sinking sensation in my stomach. The kind that tells you the world you're standing on is about to crack wide open. My husband lay in that hospital bed, his leg elevated in a cast, his chest rising and falling with the peaceful rhythm of sleep. He looked so vulnerable. So innocent. I had spent the last 3 days by his side, feeding him, adjusting his pillows, holding his hand through the pain. When he fell off that ladder at the construction site, I dropped everything. I left work in the middle of a presentation. I drove 90 miles an hour on the highway with tears streaming down my face because the thought of losing him felt like someone was ripping my heart out of my chest. That's how much I loved Darnell. That's how much I believed in us. And now, standing in the dim glow of that hospital room with the steady beep of his monitor filling the silence, I stared at the note in my hand. My fingers wouldn't stop shaking. It took me 3 tries to unfold it completely. Don't come again. Check the camera. 8 words. No signature. No explanation. Just a warning wrapped in mystery, handed to me by a woman whose face I couldn't even remember now. I looked toward the door, but she was already gone. The hallway outside was empty, sterile, cold. I read it again. Don't come again. Check the camera. What camera? What was I not supposed to see? And why would the head nurse, a complete stranger, risk her job to tell me something like this? I looked back at Darnell. His face was turned toward the window, the fading afternoon light casting soft shadows across his cheekbones. He looked like the man I married. The man who held me when my mother died. The man who cried at the birth of both our children. The man who told me, just 2 nights ago, that I was the only woman he had ever truly loved. But something in that note made my blood run cold. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the chair beside his bed, watching him breathe, replaying every moment of our marriage in my head like a movie I was suddenly watching for the first time. The way he came home late on Thursdays. The way his phone was always face down on the table. The way he started going to the gym 6 months ago and came back smelling like soap, like he had already showered somewhere else. I had noticed these things before. Of course I had. But I buried them. I wrapped them in excuses and tucked them away in a corner of my mind labeled "Don't go there." Because questioning Darnell meant questioning everything. Our home. Our children. Our future. And I wasn't ready for that. But now, holding that note, I couldn't bury it anymore. The next morning, I told him I had to go home to check on the kids. He smiled at me, that same warm, trusting smile he always gave me, and told me he loved me. I kissed his forehead and whispered it back. But as I walked out of that hospital, my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Check the camera. We had a security system at home. One I had installed 3 years ago after a break-in scare on our street. There were cameras at the front door, the back porch, and the living room. Darnell never liked them. He said they made him feel watched. At the time, I thought it was just him being paranoid. Now I wondered if he had a different reason. The house was quiet when I got home. Our daughter, Destiny, was at school. Our son, Jalen, was at basketball practice. I had about 2 hours before anyone came home. 2 hours to find out if my entire life was a lie. I sat down at my laptop in the kitchen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The security app was already open. All I had to do was click. But I couldn't. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to close it. Part of me wanted to delete the app entirely, throw my laptop in the trash, and pretend that note never existed. Because as long as I didn't know, I could still believe. I could still hold on to the version of my life where Darnell was faithful, where our marriage was solid, where our love was real. But the truth was already there, waiting. And I knew that if I didn't face it now, it would eat me alive. I clicked on the footage from Thursday. 2 weeks ago. At first, it was nothing. Just an empty living room. The sunlight shifting across the carpet. The clock on the wall ticking away the hours. And then, at 2:47 p.m., the front door opened. Darnell walked in. He wasn't alone. The woman behind him was tall, slender, with long braids that fell past her shoulders. She was laughing at something he said, her hand resting casually on his arm. He turned to close the door, and she wrapped her arms around him from behind. He didn't pull away. He smiled. He turned around and kissed her, not a quick peck, but a long, slow, deliberate kiss. The kind he used to give me. I stopped breathing. They moved toward the couch, our couch, the one I picked out 2 years ago because it matched the curtains. She sat down first, and he lowered himself beside her, his hand sliding up her thigh. I watched as he whispered something in her ear, and she laughed again, that same carefree laugh, like she belonged there. Like she had been there before. I don't know how long I sat there watching. Minutes. Maybe hours. The footage kept playing, and I kept watching, even though every second felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I watched him pour her wine in glasses we got as a wedding gift. I watched her kick off her heels and curl up against him like it was the most natural thing in the world. I watched him kiss her neck, her collarbone, her lips, over and over again. And then I watched them walk upstairs. Toward our bedroom. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen cracked. I don't remember how I ended up on the floor. I just know that at some point, my legs gave out. I was on my knees in the middle of my own kitchen, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deeper than your throat, somewhere primal, somewhere broken. 17 years. 2 children. A mortgage. A life. And he brought another woman into our home. Into our bed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to drive back to that hospital and demand answers, demand explanations, demand the truth I should have been given years ago. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I picked myself up off the floor, washed my face, and rewound the footage. Because there was something I needed to know. Something that was gnawing at the back of my mind, even through the pain. Who was she? I paused the video on her face. She was beautiful, there was no denying that. High cheekbones, flawless skin, a smile that could light up a room. She looked younger than me. Maybe 30. Maybe less. And there was something familiar about her. Something I couldn't quite place. I stared at that frozen image for a long time. And then it hit me. The braids. The shape of her eyes. The way she tilted her head when she laughed. I had seen that face before. In a photograph. On my sister's mantle. No. That was the only word in my mind as I grabbed my keys and ran to my car. No. 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 It couldn't be. It wasn't possible. My sister, Keisha, she wouldn't do this to me. We had been through everything together. When Mama died, we held each other and cried for days. When her first marriage fell apart, I let her move in with us for 6 months. When I had Destiny, she was the first person in the delivery room after Darnell. She was my blood. My family. My best friend. She wouldn't. But even as I drove toward her apartment, even as I told myself I was wrong, I knew. Deep down, in that place where the truth lives even when we refuse to look at it, I knew. I pulled into her parking lot and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My hands were shaking again. My heart was racing. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to know. But I had to. I walked up the stairs to her 3rd-floor unit, each step heavier than the last. I knocked on the door, 3 sharp raps, and waited. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. The lock clicked. The door swung open. And there she was. Keisha. My sister. Wearing the same silk robe I had seen in the video. Naomi? What are you doing here? Her voice was light, casual, like she hadn't just gutted me from the inside. She leaned against the doorframe with that easy smile of hers, the same smile she'd had since we were kids. Like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. All I could do was stare at her, this woman I had trusted with everything, this woman who shared my blood, and try to understand how she could look me in the eye like nothing had happened. Is everything okay? She asked, her smile faltering slightly. Is Darnell all right? The sound of his name on her lips made something snap inside me. You know exactly how Darnell is, I heard myself say. My voice didn't sound like mine. It was cold. Hollow. Empty. Her face changed then. Just for a second. A flicker of something, fear? Guilt, crossed her features before she smoothed it away. What are you talking about? Don't, I said. The word came out like a blade. Don't you dare stand there and lie to me. I saw the footage, Keisha. I saw you in my house. In my living room. On my couch. Walking up my stairs toward my bedroom with my husband. The silence that followed was deafening. For a long moment, she just stood there, frozen. Her lips parted like she was going to say something, but no words came out. I watched the mask slip away, the carefully constructed facade she had worn around me for God knows how long, and underneath it was the truth. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. How long? I demanded. My voice cracked on the words. How long have you been sleeping with my husband? She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. 2 years, she whispered. 2 years. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my hand reaching for the railing to steady myself. 2 years. That meant she was already sleeping with him when she stood beside me at Mama's funeral. When she helped me plan Jalen's birthday party. When she sat across from me at Thanksgiving dinner, laughing and joking like we were still sisters. Why? The question tore out of me, raw and desperate. Why would you do this to me? After everything we've been through? I'm your sister, Keisha. Your sister. A tear slipped down her cheek. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She took a shaky breath. You've always had everything, Naomi. The perfect husband. The perfect kids. The perfect life. And I had nothing. My marriage failed. My career fell apart. And then Darnell started paying attention to me. He made me feel seen. He made me feel like I mattered. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you decided to steal my life? Because yours wasn't working out? That's your excuse? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I was shouting now, and I didn't care who heard. You looked at everything I had, everything I built, everything I sacrificed for, and you decided you wanted it for yourself. You didn't care about me. You didn't care about my children. You only cared about yourself. She reached for my arm. Naomi, please. I yanked away from her like her touch burned. Don't touch me, I said. Don't ever touch me again. I drove back to the hospital in a daze. The streets blurred past me. Traffic lights changed from green to red to green again, and I barely noticed. All I could hear was Keisha's voice, 2 years. 2 years. 2 years, playing on a loop in my head. All I could see was that footage. Darnell's hands on her body. His lips on her skin. The way he looked at her like she was the center of his universe. I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. This was something else entirely. This was being stabbed in the back by the two people you trusted most in the world, at the same time, with the same knife. This was realizing that every memory you cherished was built on a foundation of lies. This was looking at your entire life and wondering how much of it was ever real. When I walked into Darnell's hospital room, he was awake. He smiled when he saw me, that same warm, trusting smile, and my stomach turned. "Hey, baby," he said. "I missed you." I didn't respond. I just stood at the foot of his bed, staring at him like I was seeing him for the first time. And in a way, I was. Because the man I thought I married, the faithful husband, the devoted father, didn't exist. He was a character Darnell had been playing for 17 years. "Naomi?" His smile faded. "What's wrong?" I walked slowly toward the chair beside his bed and sat down. I didn't trust my legs to hold me. "I know," I said quietly. "I know about Keisha." The color drained from his face. "What?" "I know, Darnell. I saw the footage. I watched you bring her into our home. Into our bed. While I was at work, while our children were at school, you were having an affair with my sister." He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare tell me it didn't mean anything. Don't tell me it was a mistake. 2 years isn't a mistake. 2 years is a choice. A choice you made every single day for 730 days. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "Naomi, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you fell out of love with me? That I wasn't enough? That my own sister was better in bed?" My voice broke on the last words, and I hated myself for it. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "It's not like that," he choked. "I never stopped loving you. I swear, I never stopped." "Then why?" The word came out as a sob. "Why wasn't I enough?" He didn't have an answer. I spent the next 3 days in a fog. I moved through the motions of life, making breakfast, driving the kids to school, going to work, but I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else. Somewhere dark and empty, a place where nothing made sense anymore. The children noticed something was wrong. Destiny asked me why I wasn't sleeping in my bedroom anymore. Jalen asked why Daddy hadn't called from the hospital. I told them everything was fine. I smiled and hugged them and pretended the world wasn't falling apart. But it was. I couldn't look at my house the same way. Every room held a memory now, a memory I didn't trust. The kitchen where I cooked dinner while he was texting her. The living room where they sat together, drinking wine from our wedding glasses. The bedroom I couldn't even enter without feeling sick. I started sleeping in the guest room. I told myself it was because I needed space. But the truth was, I couldn't lie in that bed anymore. Not knowing what had happened there. Not knowing how many times she had been in it. On the 4th day, I called my mother's oldest friend, Miss Gloria, the woman who had helped raise me after Daddy left. She listened without interrupting while I told her everything. The note. The footage. Keisha. Darnell. All of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Baby girl," she finally said, her voice soft and steady, "what are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer. Something kept bothering me. Even through the pain, even through the grief, there was a question I couldn't shake. Who was that nurse? She had risked her job to warn me. She had put that note in my hand and walked away without a word. Why? How did she know? And why did she care? A week after Darnell came home from the hospital, I went back. I needed answers. I needed to understand how a stranger had known what my own husband had hidden from me for 2 years. I found her in the break room. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw recognition flash in her eyes. She knew exactly who I was. "Can we talk?" I asked. She glanced around, then nodded. Outside. We walked to a bench in the courtyard behind the hospital. It was raining softly, and the air smelled like wet earth and fallen leaves. She sat down beside me, her hands folded in her lap, and waited. "Why did you give me that note?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "Because I've been where you are. 10 years ago, my husband cheated on me with my cousin. And everyone knew except me. My family, my friends, they all knew, and no one said anything. They let me walk around like a fool while my whole life was built on a lie." Her voice cracked slightly. "When your husband was admitted, I recognized the woman who came to visit him. She introduced herself as his wife's sister, but the way they looked at each other. I knew. I've seen that look before. And I couldn't let you go through what I went through. I couldn't watch another woman lose herself because nobody had the courage to tell her the truth." I felt tears streaming down my face. "Thank you," I whispered. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You're going to get through this. I promise you. It doesn't feel like it now, but you will." I filed for divorce 6 weeks later. It was the hardest decision I had ever made. Not because I still loved Darnell, I didn't know what I felt for him anymore. Not because I was afraid of being alone, I had been alone in that marriage for years without realizing it. The hardest part was telling my children. I sat them down in the living room, the same living room where their father had brought his mistress, and tried to find the words. Destiny was 16. Jalen was 14. They were old enough to understand, but I didn't want them to carry this burden. I didn't want them to hate their father, even though part of me wanted them to. "Your father and I are getting a divorce," I said. "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. We both love you more than anything in the world, and that will never change." Destiny started crying immediately. Jalen just stared at the floor, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. "Why?" Destiny asked. "What happened?" I hesitated. The truth sat on my tongue like a stone. Part of me wanted to tell them everything, let them see their father for who he really was. But I couldn't. They were still children. They didn't deserve to carry the weight of his betrayal. "Sometimes people grow apart," I said softly. "Sometimes marriages don't work out, even when both people try. But I want you to know that this decision was about me and your father, not about you. You are both loved. You are both wanted. And no matter what happens between us, we will always be your parents." Destiny buried her face in my shoulder and sobbed. Jalen got up and walked out of the room without a word. I heard his bedroom door slam shut. That night, I cried until I had nothing left. I never spoke to Keisha again. She called dozens of times in the weeks after I confronted her. She left voicemails filled with apologies, explanations, excuses. She even showed up at my door once, begging me to let her in. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Our other relatives tried to intervene. Aunts, uncles, cousins, they called and visited, urging me to reconcile. "She's still your sister," they said. "Blood is thicker than water." But blood hadn't stopped her from climbing into my husband's bed. Blood hadn't stopped her from lying to my face for 2 years. Blood hadn't meant anything to her when she was tearing my life apart. I couldn't forget. And I couldn't forgive. In the end, I had to let her go. Not because she didn't matter, she had mattered too much, but because holding on to the anger was destroying me. Every time I thought about her, I felt that same crushing weight in my chest. Every time I remembered her face, I saw the footage again. I couldn't move forward while dragging that pain behind me. So I made a choice. I chose to release her, not for her sake, but for mine. I chose to stop answering her calls, stop reading her messages, stop waiting for an apology that would never be enough. I chose to mourn the sister I thought I had, the relationship we once shared, and then let it go. It was the only way to survive. The divorce took 8 months. It was messy and painful, filled with lawyers and paperwork and arguments about money and custody and all the small details of a life being dismantled. Darnell fought me on everything at first: the house, the cars, the savings account. But in the end, he knew he had no leg to stand on. He had been the one to break his vows. He had been the one to destroy our family. When it was finally over, I stood in my empty living room and cried. But this time, the tears were different. They weren't tears of grief or anger or betrayal. They were tears of release. Tears of freedom. For the first time in years, I could breathe without feeling like something was pressing down on my chest. The weight I had been carrying, the suspicions, the doubts, the constant low hum of unease, was finally gone. I was alone. But I was also free. In the months that followed, I rediscovered who I was. I had spent so many years being Darnell's wife, Destiny, and Jalen's mother, Keisha's sister. I had poured myself into those roles so completely that I had forgotten I was also Naomi, a woman with her own dreams, her own passions, her own identity. I started running again, something I hadn't done since college. I signed up for a ceramics class and spent Saturday mornings shaping clay with my hands, turning nothing into something beautiful. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the years I was lost in my marriage. I read books. I traveled. I learned to be alone without being lonely. It wasn't easy. There were nights I woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. There were moments when the silence felt unbearable. But slowly, inch by inch, I rebuilt myself. Not the woman I used to be, she was gone forever. But someone new. Someone stronger. Someone who had been broken and had chosen to heal. Destiny and Jalen struggled in their own ways. Destiny blamed herself at first. She thought that if she had been a better daughter, maybe Darnell and I would have stayed together. I held her while she cried and told her, again and again, that none of this was her fault. Eventually, she started to believe me. Eventually, she started to heal. Jalen took longer. He was angry, at his father, at me, at the world. He stopped talking, stopped trying at school, stopped caring about basketball. For a while, I was terrified I was losing him. But I didn't give up. I showed up for him, even when he pushed me away. I told him I loved him, even when he didn't respond. I waited. And slowly, he came back to me. One night, about a year after the divorce, he knocked on my bedroom door. I was reading in bed, and he stood in the doorway with that same stubborn look his father used to have. "Can we talk?" he asked. I set down my book. Always. He sat on the edge of my bed, his hands clasped between his knees. "I know what Dad did," he said quietly. "I heard you on the phone with Miss Gloria. I know about Aunt Keisha." My heart dropped. "Jalen. I'm not mad at you," he said quickly. "I'm mad at him. And at her. But mostly at him. How could he do that to you? How could he do that to us?" I reached over and took his hand. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I've asked myself that question 1,000 times, and I still don't have an answer. Some people make choices that hurt the people they're supposed to love. It doesn't make sense. It's not fair. But it's not a reflection of you or me, it's a reflection of them." He was quiet for a long moment. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. "Like, really okay?" I thought about it. About everything I had been through. About the pain and the healing and the long, slow process of putting myself back together. "I'm getting there," I said. "One day at a time." He nodded. Then he leaned over and hugged me, the first hug he had given me in over a year. I held on to him and cried, and for the first time in a long time, the tears were happy. 2 years after the divorce, I received a letter from Darnell. I almost threw it away unopened. But something made me pause, curiosity, maybe, or the need for closure. I sat down at my kitchen table and slid my finger under the flap. Dear Naomi, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not just sorry that I got caught, sorry for what I did. Sorry for the pain I caused you and our children. Sorry for being too much of a coward to tell you the truth. There's no excuse for what I did. I know that now. I was selfish and weak and scared, and I made choices that destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. You didn't deserve that. You deserved a husband who honored you, who cherished you, who would have never betrayed your trust. I'm in therapy now. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, why I sabotaged my own life. It's not easy, but it's necessary. I owe it to myself. I owe it to our children. And I owe it to you, even though I know I can never make things right. I hope you found happiness, Naomi. I hope you found peace. You were always the strongest person I knew, and I have no doubt that you've built a beautiful life without me. I will always love you. Even if I didn't always show it. Darnell. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into a drawer. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 3 years later, I met someone new. His name was David, and he was nothing like Darnell. He was quiet where Darnell was loud. Steady where Darnell was restless. He listened when I talked and remembered the small things, my favorite coffee order, the way I liked my eggs, the songs that made me cry. I was terrified at first. The thought of trusting someone again, of opening my heart after everything I had been through, felt impossible. But David was patient. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He simply showed up, day after day, proving through his actions that he was worthy of my trust. We got married on a beach in Jamaica, with Destiny and Jalen standing beside us. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and as I said my vows, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive hope of my youth, the kind that believes love will conquer all and people will never let you down. But a stronger, wiser hope. The hope of someone who has been broken and rebuilt. The hope of someone who knows that life is painful and unpredictable, but also beautiful and worth fighting for. That night, lying in David's arms, I thought about everything I had been through. The betrayal. The heartbreak. The long, lonely months of healing. And I realized something that changed everything. My pain had been my teacher. If Darnell hadn't betrayed me, I never would have learned how strong I truly was. If Keisha hadn't hurt me, I never would have learned to stand on my own. If that nurse hadn't slipped me that note, those 8 words that shattered my world, I might still be living a lie. The truth had destroyed me. But it had also set me free. I share this story not for pity, but for anyone who has ever been betrayed by someone they loved. Someone they trusted. Someone they thought would never hurt them. I want you to know that you are not alone. I want you to know that the pain you're feeling right now, the crushing, suffocating weight of betrayal, will not last forever. It feels like it will. It feels like you'll never breathe normally again. But you will. One day, you'll wake up and the first thing you think about won't be them. One day, you'll laugh without forcing it. One day, you'll look in the mirror and see someone you're proud of. The road is long. The healing is slow. But you are stronger than you know. And if you're reading this because you're the one who betrayed someone, if you're the one who broke a heart that trusted you, I want you to understand the magnitude of what you've done. Trust is not a given. It's a gift. And when you shatter it, you shatter something sacred. Something that can never be fully repaired. Choose differently. Choose honesty, even when it's hard. Choose loyalty, even when temptation calls. Choose to be the person your partner believes you are. Because the person you hurt? They'll survive. They'll heal. They'll build a life more beautiful than anything you could have imagined. But the guilt? That stays with you forever. So tell me, if you were standing in my shoes, holding that note in your hand, watching your world fall apart around you, what would you do?